Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1252 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Season 4 of Yes, We Are Open, the award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. The Moment Lab. Brand marketing and strategy, PR, advertising, and production. You need the Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic'd debut, is Kurt Swinghammer.
Yo.
Welcome, Kurt.
How's it going?
You biked here today.
Yeah, it was a beautiful ride. Really great.
Okay, kudos to you. I love it when a guest bikes to the TMDS studios, so thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure. It was. It's always so great to ride along the lake. It's just you get that vista. Eyes stretch out, and it's really informative for me as a visual artist to get into that environment. Yeah,
you're a creative guy. It would inspire you, I would think, being around nature in all her glory.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, Kurt Swinghammer, when I said I'm having Kurt Swinghammer on, a few people thought I had a porno star coming on, Swinghammer being your porno name. But I'm like, no, man, this is the coolest guy. And I'm going to basically read some shout-outs for you from 3 pretty recent guests of Toronto Mic'd who all kind of told Kurt Swinghammer stories. And basically, when I hear these stories, I just want to let everybody know, I'm listening to my guest. I'm not just interviewing, recording. I'm listening, and I'm like, I got to get Kurt Swinghammer on Toronto Mic'd. You're like a missing link. So thank you for being here.
Okay. It was a pleasure to be here. And, I'm not a podcast follower of anyone. I never listened to them. But, when you invited me, which is a very, very nice gesture, I thought I should check this out. I found it quite remarkable. You've created this incredible archive of all these Torontonians, essentially, mostly. And I thought that was a really significant accumulation of information that you've created.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that's praise from Caesar. Love it. Thank you so much. Now, you're right. They're mainly Torontonians, but not always. For example, I will throw in the odd Burlington resident, but Rob Pruce,
right.
When Rob Pruce heard Kurt Swinghammer was coming on, he said, he's the coolest guy. Ask him about his band Communism. They're so good, and they do an amazing version of Nova Heart.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Communism, I'm no longer in the band. It changed abruptly during COVID. But yeah, we were playing, it was led by Don Kerr, who some folks would know from his long-standing work with Sexsmith, and currently the Bahamas live show, and Dan Magman. And he used to be in the Rheostatics, so Don's kind of like a really central figure in Toronto music scene. And it was his band, and with Kevin Lacroix on bass and myself on guitar, and it was a really good thing. And then I've always loved Nova Heart. I remember distinctly the first time I heard it when I was living in Niagara Falls, and I just thought, wow, this is super modern sounding, and I saw the band a couple of times play the Spoons, and it just kind of really blew my mind. So I've always had that song in my back pocket as a cool Ontario cover, and that's what we used to play that. And I know that Rob caught one of those COVID-y, simulcast-y things, Zoomy things, and it's very touching to play it for him.
Well, Rob's going to be on Toronto Mic'd again later this month for another episode of Toast. Now, Ron Sexsmith, you dropped the name Ron Sexsmith. So there's going to be more Sexsmith content later, but he's another guy who was on recently. He came on during the pandemic, actually, because he's in, remind me.
Stratford.
Yes, right. So he was like, that's a long drive. I'm like, okay. I let Ron Sexsmith zoom it in. That's how much I respect the man. I'm not going to make him drive here from Stratford. But same with Peter Mansbridge. He got the same deal. Okay,
Oh,
you're
nice.
you're in Stratford. You can zoom it in. But Ron Sexsmith, who will come up later, he was telling Kurt Swinghammer stories. But here's a guy who told this whopper great story. Whopper sounds like it's a lie. This was not a lie, so I shouldn't call it a whopper. I don't know. I didn't go to Burger King. Great line from Pulp Fiction. But Blair Packham, who's been on many times, he wrote me this. It's kind of long, so I think we're going to step through this. I need to cover all of this, okay? So, Kurt, work with me here. I'll pause for you to share your story or your remarks, and then I'll keep going with Blair Packham's note, which is a pretty detailed note. But first, he starts with Kurt Swinghammer. Oh, by the way, if you want to pop your beer now, you can do it on the mic. Great Lakes sent you over some fresh craft beer.
That's
so
awesome. I have to see what they are here.
Okay. So the coldest one is a Canuck Pale Ale.
That sounds good.
That's and you can't go wrong with the Canuck. Right on the mic. Kurt Swinghammer just opened his Canuck Pale Ale, courtesy of Great Lakes Brewery. So if you have room in that backpack, I'll send you home with some Great Lakes, so you can have some later. Get comfortable there.
Yep.
Good to go. Okay.
Sweet.
He goes, Kurt Swinghammer, my dear friend of many years. Ask him about our evening with Burt Bacharach. So I'm pausing right now because there's a lot more here to cover. But when Burt Bacharach passed away, I had Blair Packham on the program, and he told this detailed story. But now let's get it from your perspective. Tell me about your evening with Burt Bacharach.
Well, it started earlier that week. I drove out to Ottawa with a mutual friend of ours, of Blair's, Dan Brick, a singer-songwriter from this way, actually, Mississauga originally. And we're both hardcore Burt fans, and so we made the pilgrimage out to see Burt with a big orchestra at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa. And I thought, well, shit, I really want to, shake the man's hand. So we did the thing where you case out, like, where's the limo? And we walked around the building and we found the limo. And sure enough, there are a couple other geeky people there to get autographs, but Burt came out in this beautiful, fresh Adidas gear, like powder blue Adidas jumpers, and he's at like white kicks, and he had his gold chain, and it's just like, it was like a dream come true. He looked so hip, and so we met him and chatted a little bit. That was really sweet. And then I went on to Montreal, and on the drive, I was by myself. I had a girlfriend in Montreal at the time, and I started writing this song about Burt in Montreal, and it turned out to be a really, really good song, actually. And then when I went home, I had a little gig at the Cameron, and I got this call, hey, we've been invited to have drinks with Burt. And because he was stuck in Toronto. That's when 9/11 went down.
Right. He was grounded.
No one knew what was going on. LaGuardia was shut up. People couldn't fly. So he was stuck in Toronto, and I guess he called Mike Myers, who, he had to develop a friendship with from the film and everything. And
right,
then,
Austin Powers.
Yeah, and then Mike said, well, I know some people there that would love to meet you, and because I think Burt was really bored. And Mike's brother Paul is a really good friend.
Gravelberries.
The Gravelberries. I was
also on FOTM. He's been on this program.
Right on, yeah. I was in the Gravelberries for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I art directed one, or did set design for a video.
All right. I dug the Gravelberries.
Oh, yeah, it was a...
Jangly pop, it was great.
Yeah, power pop. And so Paul, I guess, put the word out, and... so anyway, I had this little gig, so I had my guitar with me, and my guitar had Burt's head on the headstock, little picture, and with a gold crown. And so, because I tend to decorate my guitars, and I've always covered his stuff. I've been a fan since I was a little kid. And so we go to this, the dinner was already, I missed the dinner or whatever, but I get to this swanky joint in Yorkville, and someplace I'd never go to. And I have my axe with me, And there's Bert, and there's Blair, and there's Michael Philip Voivoda, who's a guy that I've worked with extensively as a producer, and a couple other folks actually, and I think Ruth Moody, who was in the really nice little trio singer-songwriter thing. And there's a chair beside Bert, and so I got to sit beside the maestro, and it was just incredible. And he had told great stories, and it was a remarkable evening. And then the classic thing was when he he's an older dude, and he had to, kind of call it quits at one point. So he gets up to leave, and everybody says goodbye. And I just impulsively sat in this chair to absorb his body heat, And then I noticed there is a glass of unfinished wine that he was drinking, so I grabbed it and took a sip and swallowed it, and Bert entered my body basically. And it was, for me, it was just like the most significant thing that had ever happened in my life, and I went home just feeling amazing. I went to my girlfriend at the time at her place in Toronto, and I just ended up breaking down in tears. It was just, I was so overcome with meeting my hero and actually having some quality time with him. It was just mind blowing.
Love that story so much. So normally, I would kind of start with like, okay, I would ask you about your upbringing in Ontario, and we might start at the beginning. Like, when did you realize you wanted to be an artist, a musician? And we'll kind of sprinkle that through. But I'm actually going to run through. I like this note from Blair Packham so much.
Sure.
So we're going to be chronologically messed up, but just think about it like it is a Pulp Fiction, a little jumping around. It's good for you. Okay. So he says, ask him about writing with Alanis Morissette.
Oh, right. Well, Alanis, this is before her big record came out. She was
Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah, she was writing with a lot of different people. Like I heard there's 100 different people she wrote with, and in town she was part of a small group of people that we were writing together. Like every week we'd do something, and Blair was part of that, and it was really neat. And I wasn't really familiar with her backstory, but she was quite remarkable. I gotta say, like the most focused young person I'd ever met. And there was no indication of what was going to happen, but she just had an amazing kind of determined, focused, positive energy about her that was really attractive. And so she came over. I had a really great space in Kensington Market, and a really neat backyard. And so we set up back there. And I'd seen her at an Ani DeFranco show just a couple nights prior. So I said, I was surprised. Oh, are you Ani? And she, oh yeah, I really want to do something as intense as Ani does. And then she started dropping other names like, oh, I'm really into Rage Against the Machine. And I was like quite surprised because I'd seen her do some very low-key, folkier type of things, which she sounded great doing. But so that gave me an indication. But we started writing something, just winging it.
Right.
It wasn't really going anywhere. And then my cat, who was an indoor cat, Chippewa, named after the town, got out. And in Kensington Market, you don't want an indoor cat roaming around. And the cat jumped over the back fence and was like, I started, oh shit. So that kind of actually ended the writing session because I was I'm going to lose my cat. And but so we didn't end up with a bona fide song. But if I may continue, there's a second part to this story.
Hey, let's hear it.
She ends up with that Ballard dude in L.A. and writes the biggest record of the century and all that.
Right.
And I've only met her once since. I was playing guitar with Peter Murphy, the dude.
Well, then my next question from Blair Packham is ask him about playing with Peter Murphy so you can kill all the birds with one stone here.
Well, I got asked to sub in for Rob Pilch, I guess. He was playing in that band. And we did a
Bauhaus, right?
Yeah, well, it was his Peter Murphy's solo thing.
I gotcha.
And I didn't really know too much about it. I was in a band was called Vital Signs with Glenn Milchman. We had opened for Love and Rockets and totally blew them off the stage. And I was just like, whatever, these guys, pasty English guys, they can barely play. But this Peter Murphy is very, very, very charismatic performer. And we did this gig in Portugal, and we went on after Alanis, and I thought, oh well, I guess we're here to clear the crowd out, like sort of, get people to go home. But they were there to see him, like a huge outdoor thing in Portugal. He's really big in certain countries. But before that, I thought, oh, Alanis is here. So I knocked on her, her door, and somebody said, and I said, yeah, I know Alanis from way back, and just want to say hi. And just a minute, and I'm sitting there waiting. Is this gonna, I thought, okay, maybe she doesn't want to be bugged. I don't think she was a huge star at that point.
Big star.
But she did so you can come in now. And so I went in and we had a little chat, but I just really got the impression that she had been through so much and was being generous to say hello to me. But kind of the last thing she wanted to do was, interact with another person. Right. She probably just needed some downtime. And then the interesting thing about her set, she had a guy on a teleprompter, and all her lyrics were on a teleprompter, which I'd never seen that before.
Huh. Was Taylor Hawkins the drummer at that point? Remember?
That I don't recall.
Okay.
I wasn't dialed into her stuff actually. I wasn't really into it.
You didn't own Jagged Little Pill.
No, but I know that Ani loved it. When she got the record, she said, "Oh, this is people." A lot of people fucking loved it.
Oh, fucking huge record.
Yeah.
Did you have I don't know. Did you ever tune into MuchMusic in the late '80s and hear her when she was kind of like Canada's Tiffany or Debbie Gibson or something? Too Hot was the big hit.
Yeah, I think I had seen that. And I loved MuchMusic, and that was a source of many gigs for me at one point. I was gigging a lot for MuchMusic, doing visuals and music, and yeah.
So much ground to cover. Kurt, I hope you canceled your any appointments you have coming up this afternoon. I might need you here a little while here. Okay. Ask him about playing guitar with. Okay, actually, I was going to ask about a lot of this stuff was already on my list, but I like the way Blair just kind of hammers it all home. Pun intended. Okay, so he wants to talk about Ron Sexsmith here. Sure. So if you don't mind, because you came up quite a bit in the Ron Sexsmith episode of Toronto Mic'd, but yeah, give me your ongoing history of your your relationship with Ron Sexsmith.
Well, we had a mutual friend. I used to live in Niagara Falls, and Ron lived in St. Catharines. And we had a friend, Rod Morrison, who built the first multi-track studio in the Niagara region. And he had a day job at Ostinak's Music, which was like, Walter Ostinak, a legendary polka guy. And it's now become a Long and McQuaid branch, but in the time it was the biggest music store. So Rod kind of knew every musician because that's where you had to go to get your supplies. And we became friends. He's a really wonderful guy. And he was actually part of the whole Port Dalhousie scene that Neil Peart would have been part of, a very vibrant music scene just outside of St. Catharines. Anyway, he said, "Oh, you've got to check out this kid, Ron Sexsmith." And he played me a cassette. And this would have been like 1980 or something.
Wow.
And this cassette, he had a band called the Midnight Scribes. And I was like, wow, it sounded like the Kinks. And I'd never heard any band sound like the Kinks other than the Kinks. And immediately I thought, this is special when somebody's got that kind of influence and inspiration like that. Major marks for me. And I thought, yeah, I've got to go see him. And then shortly after that, maybe like the next year, I think it was 81, we were on a bill together for at the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie. And when he started singing, I just got the wicked chills up my spine, which is kind of a rare thing that happens to me when I hear certain music. And I was just like kind of blown away. And he was doing his own stuff. And then we would do gigs together occasionally. Back in those days in that area, you couldn't really do original material in bars and stuff. But I started working at an artist-run center, which was an art gallery with a performance space, and I would perform there. And then Ron and I started doing some shows together sometimes. And then when I moved to Toronto in '84, I said, "Man, you got to get out here. St. Catharines is fine, but like if you want to make something happen, you got to move here." So he eventually did, and then I produced a cassette of his first release, basically.
Wow.
And because I was putting out these homemade cassettes, like, really simply done, but I was kind of like the Phil Spector of the 4-track cassette deck. I was like
Without the murder.
or the do. But very, very, I was kind of ambitious with limited means. And Ron, I was the only person that Ron knew that did that sort of thing, I guess. And so, yeah, we did a really neat little cassette album, and that a couple people in town, William Ten, Skinny, the famous, he died a couple years ago, manager, he's working with Hayden, and he's really was an amazing guy. He liked it, and I think he kind of passed it around to some key people, and eventually, Ron found some management and a label in the States, and the rest was history.
All right, now more recent history involving you and Ron Sexsmith. Let me just pause the Blair Packham segment. I mean, I still have more Blair Packham stuff to talk about, but I did get a nice note yesterday from Michael Barclay.
Oh, yeah.
Also an FOTM, of course. And Michael writes in, ask him why live sound techs wanted to beat up acoustic guitarists on stage in the 1980s, and also Sexshammer. So, I guess that's two different questions there. But what is Michael referring to about why live sound techs wanted to beat up acoustic guitarists on stage in the 1980s? Is that true?
I had a bar owner punch me in the face once for dancing with a chair. I think maybe the band was Michel Jourdain and the Poles. They have that song, CN Tower, kind of a punk band from the early days. But I actually, sound people, because I can play, they always enjoyed it. And I had my shit together, and I was on and off stage in a jiffy. And, I was doing a lot of opening sets for, people like Bob Mould, and like the Garys were throwing me great gigs. Opened for the Proclaimers once, and yeah, I mean, so I've never had any problem with sound people ever. I don't know what
But that being punched in the face story, did that make have not been the same? I'm thinking maybe Barclay got it in his research for his big book of his.
Yeah, he did interview me, and I'm in there a few spots. I'm also, there's a loose end with Alanis Morissette. I did in the unauthorized biography of Alanis Morissette. Somebody said, "Hey man, you're in the unauthorized biography." And so I went to whatever bookstore just to see what was going on. And I looked in the index, and there's like Kurt Swinghammer. And it's like, God, there's 2 pages. I'm like, holy shit, it must be a big entry. And so I flipped to the page, and it goes, Kurt Swinghammer. I had to flip the page over to get to and then she basically, I'm not, whatever. She had a bit of a crush on me or something.
Wow.
And came to, I used to have a lot of parties in Kensington Market, and she came to this party kind of to scope things out, I guess. But I'm just, I was not interested in her or her music, frankly. But and she and then in this book she told her friend, "I'm so over him," and after about 5 minutes at my pad. But that's that.
Oh,
story.
you could have been played the Dave Coulier role in the You Ought to Know autobiographical song there,
right?
Jagged Little Pill. Okay, so in an alternate universe.
Yeah. And so what we were.
Oh, we're all over the place. But now let's talk Sexshammer.
Sexshammer was at one point. Ron was really frustrated that nobody in Toronto cared about him except for some friends and musicians. All the record labels ignored him. Pretty much everybody except for a few venues that liked him. Yvonne Metzel would give him gigs and stuff. And but we just thought, well, it'll be fun. Why don't we do a duo thing, and I'll play your songs and you play my songs. And so that's what we did. We traded songs, but he would cover mine and I would cover his. And we called ourselves Sexshammer, and I had a great little logo that would have been, it's kind of naughty, but, and then I remember one gig we did at Say What, which was kind of an interesting hub of music in a non-musical area of town, front and Jarvis, I guess. And so we did the Sexsmith gig, and then I guess somebody just saw the name, and they were all gothed out, you know, like all the gear on.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is so disappointing because there's 2 acoustic guitars and these 2 squares on stage. But that was just a short-lived fun project.
Okay, so let's now, since I'm gonna just dump all the Ron Sexsmith stuff here, there's a whole bunch more, but like, so Sexsmith Swinghammer songs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I never forget here. In fact, this also segues into yet another Blair Packham question. But I'm going to introduce this part with a song.
Oh,
okay, so look, we're going to play a little of this. You can always talk over it. I'll just give it a taste, then I'll bring it down. But here is some of Sexsmith Swinghammer songs.
Children on horseback go by on carousels of summertime, and it all looks so new when I'm off somewhere. You are on my mind.
Memories I'll unpack in time, retrace the pages of my life. For now I refuse, 'cause I'm off somewhere. You are on my mind.
There's nothing heavy in my heart
There's nothing heavy in my heart.
when your love is standing
Love
guard.
is standing guard.
There's nothing heavy in my heart
There's nothing heavy
except when you're
off
off
somewhere. Someday we'll come back and find
The rain has made the sidewalk shine. It all looks so new when I'm off somewhere. You are on my mind. You are on my mind.
I know I said I'd play a little and fade it
Yeah.
down, but I was enjoying that.
Oh, me too. I never listen to stuff I do, so I haven't heard that for so long. I'm quite taken with it.
Tell us what we're listening to here.
Yeah, that's the female vocalist is Laurie Cullen, who's my wife, and that was Ron singing. It's a duet, and Laurie and I had a kid 10 years ago. He just turned 10 a couple days ago, Ray, and when that happened, Laurie didn't want to make music, and became a mom, and for a few years, music was just not part of her life, and she had put out, I forget how many records up to that point, and she had a Juno nomination for Best Jazz Vocal Album once, and CBC support and Jazz FM stuff, and beautiful records, really amazing. And then when Ron lived in Toronto, we used to hang a lot, and one night we were just having some drinks, and he was like, we gotta write an album for Laurie and to get her back in, And I thought, yeah, that's a great excuse to get together and write. And Laurie had gone to the bathroom or something, and he came up with this idea, and when she came back, we'd go, hey, we're gonna write a record for you, and like it or not, right? And so I wrote all the music, and including the melodies and everything. And then Ron, I'd send him the like that song, and I'd just be playing guitar, going, dwee da boom do da dum dwee, and then he would come back and plug in words to all the dwees and dums, and even sometimes would be inspired by, oh, that dwee sounds great, and he would find a word that would rhyme with dwee.
Right.
Yeah, and so that project, and then Linus, True North, heard about it, and they said, well, we'll put it out. If we recorded it and mixed it and finished it without any label interference or anything like that. But they released it, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's Sexsmith Swinghammer Songs 2016, and Laurie Cullen, your partner, your wife, and Ron Sexsmith, and that was the. I was going there anyways, of course. I know Blair's talking to his. I don't know how's he listening on his iPhone. He's talking to his iPhone right now, but I'm glad that Blair had that on the list. He wanted me to ask you about your lovely and talented partner, Laurie Cullen.
Yeah, well, it's she's an amazing singer and really interesting writer. Her last album was all her own material, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I think because I had my fingerprints all over that one, the Sexsmith Swinghammer thing. She wanted to do something where I didn't have anything to do with it. And then last night she actually played me the new stuff she's doing, which it kind of blew my mind. She's working with a DJ type of guy, right? It's a very contemporary sounding, and but with her unique sensibility with the melody and vocal texture and stuff. But that album was Ron and I both are such huge fans of Bacharach, and that was a major sort of inspiration. We thought, well, let's do something of that ilk, and I remember that song is like with a duet, like a female and male vocal are often can't work in the same key always. So it was really interesting to find a way to change the key for Ron to sing it, and I'm quite really happy to hear that again.
Well, buckle up. We're just getting started here, Kurt. This is all a pregame show here. Okay. Ask him about designing the retail image of Sam the Record Man stores across the country.
Yeah. Jason Snyderman, it was Sam's son. Well, I guess going back, the first time I ever bought a record was at Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street. And so every time I went to Yonge Street, we always lived in a small town around, outside of Toronto, but I'd go to Sam's. It was just like the pilgrimage. And Jason, at one point wanted to do, remember that vodka that had like Keith Haring would do an ad, and they would, Absolute Vodka.
Yes. They
would get all these, Warhol, all these famous artists to do a version of their bottle.
Right.
So when that was happening, Jason thought, let's do something like that with our sign. And you got Mendelssohn Joe, myself, Mary Margaret O'Hara, I'm pretty sure, who's a great visual artist, especially when it comes to graphic, right? She did the Rivoli font, right?
Right.
And she did some album cover stuff, including her own, of course. And maybe Fiona Smythe might have been another person. I've kind of blanking only just four of us, I think. And we all did our interpretation of the storefront. And Jason just really loved the one I did and turned it into a T-shirt, and that kind of did really well for the store. And then just started giving me gigs, and I ended up designing the store bag and a font called Sam. So all the R&B, soul, all those music categories were in this font that I came up with. And then the ultimate gig I got from Sam's was doing a makeover for the Zamboni at Maple Leaf Gardens, and I did it. I turned it into a hot rod with a big scoop of an engine and a flame job and Sam's on it. And the amazing thing was we did it, and it looked wicked. And I got to do it there at night, like when only me and the security guard at Maple Leaf Gardens. It was pretty amazing. And then they get a new Zamboni like every 5 years, and the release was up or whatever, so they had to get a new one. And Jason said, well, I want that a hot rod Zamboni, again. So I got to do it twice.
Amazing. And Jason, of course, was in Blue Peter.
Yeah, I'd seen him in Blue Peter, and he plays with Chris Tate, I think. And that's another great
like a Chalk
old friend.
Circle thing.
Yeah, and the second gig I ever did in Toronto, Chalk Circle opened for me. Then I was opening for Director 17, Andy Mays' old band from Skydiggers.
Yeah, Andy Mays also an FOTM. So shout out to Andy Mays. And let me connect all these dots here. This is what happens when I have on people like you. It's like, that does. But Chris Wardman was in Blue Peter, of course, and he produced that great Chalk Circle album with April Fool on it.
Yeah, and that's another song that I've covered and love that tune a lot.
Also, the first band I ever saw live, I saw them at Ontario Place Forum as a kid, and that was my first concert.
I opened for them at the Forum once, solo.
Was it like, I want to say 85 is when I saw them, but it's,
Yeah,
you know, it was pretty good.
in and around there.
Okay. Maybe I saw you there.
Well, the funny thing with that gig was like,
Yeah.
I love the Forum, but just before I walked out to do it, the guy at the gate goes, "How fast do you want to spin around?" Right? And it's like, I don't know, maybe slow. I don't want to get dizzy. So I go out there and I'm moving so slowly that like half the audience is staring at my ass for a half an hour. And I just thought, can we step on it? Like, you know, but I learned my lesson.
But that disembodied voice asking you how fast do you want to go reminds me. So I worked 3 years at the Canadian National Exhibition. So
nice.
as a game booth attendant, and the game booth that I was working at was right across the midway from the Polar Express.
Right.
And, you know, that was back when the X was on for 20 days. So it was 20 days, and I would be there all 20 days to close up and everything. And the number of times I heard that guy say, "Do you want to go faster?
Right.
Do you want to go faster?" Like, it's to this day, it's like, and by the way, just fun fact is when you close down the CNE, whoever controlled the boom box or the loudspeakers on that Polar Express, every single night when everybody left played "It's a Wonderful, What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong.
Right.
So that song would like permeate through the night sky for 20 days. It was, and now, you know, to this day, if I hear any "What a Wonderful World," I'm back at the X as a teenager, so
Nice.
15-year-old. So shout out to Polar Express. Okay, loving this. Now, we did mention Paul Myers, FOTM Paul Myers earlier, but Blair Packham wants to know, Kurt, do you like Paul Myers' impression of him?
Of
I guess it's you, yeah, because the way he wrote, yeah, ask him if he likes Paul Myers' impression of him. Do you like Paul Myers' impression of you, Kurt Swinghammer?
Well, everybody sort of, there's a number of people that do me, and they all kind of have the same go-to things, and it's always like dropping hipster language and certain, like, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way, but you know, it's whatever.
It's an honor to be impersonated.
I guess so, but it's always like, well, the one person, Jason Mercer does a good one. Jason, I used to be in a band with Jason, playing with Jeremy Robinson, and then he got headhunted by Ani DeFranco and joined her band. And he used to be in the Bourbon Tabernacle Choir, right?
Chris Brown and Kate Fenner.
He's got a good Swinghammer impersonation. So if he ever comes on, you got to get it from him.
I would do it. Chris Brown's been over here.
Oh, right.
He's doing this thing with still doing it, I guess. Stephen Stanley and I almost said Romp and Ronnie Hawkins, but he passed away. This is Ron Hawkins from Low So Low. So they all three came over and played here in the basement.
Nice. Oh,
but
wow.
and I think now that I think about it, there was a deal in place for Kate Fenner to come on, and it never actually happened. And I need to follow up. I need Kate Fenner on Toronto Mike. By the way, before I go back to the Blair Packham list, and then I have my own list. So you're going to be here a bit, but you Ani Ani, right? Yep. I was going to say Annie DeFranco. Do you like? You have more than just like, you're not just a fan. She released some of your music. Is there a connection there? I was reading about.
Yeah, she. Well, first I did a session on one of her albums called "To the Teeth," and we recorded down in New Orleans, where she was working at Lanois' old studio there. And that album actually has Prince on it and Maceo Parker, and they weren't there. Prince did his thing at his studio, but I came up with a guitar solo that's kind of my all-time favorite guitar solos that I've ever done, and it's partly because I loved her material, and to be recording in New Orleans was an incredible, experience. And then she heard this record I did called Vostok 6, which is an electronic kind of concept album about the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, Russian cosmonaut, and she liked it a lot, and she said, "Well, would you like to put it out on my label?" I had released it independently in Toronto, and so she put it out on Righteous Babe, and gave it a second life, sort of.
Okay, now that you've opened the Vostok box here, okay, let me play a little, if you're cool. Let me play a little of that, and then I got questions about Vostok 6.
Right. Okay.
Got a ticket for the trip. Get your kicks on Vostok 6. 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 CALE. Vostok 6.
And it goes on and on. So that album,
Sounds. Can I just say,
Yeah.
sounds great in the headphones. Like, just fucking cool. But go on.
well, that's Michael Philip Voivoda mixing that, and we're old pals, and he loves electronic music, and his studio is full of modular synths and things, and so it was he loved digging in there, and at that's pretty old now, right? It's over 20 years old. And at that time, like, it was hard to find a vocoder. I mean, those things,
Right.
None of the companies had reissued them, and there's a lot of ring modulation, and I recorded everything at home. It's a lot of Moog synthesizer, and that project. I mean, there's some like easy listening stuff, and there's some prog rock, and that's the most, I guess, proto techno kind of track, and it's represents the takeoff of the Vostok 6 craft. And her story was fascinating because, the first woman in space in like 1963, and when she was spinning around the Earth, Kennedy was assassinated. Wow. So all the publicity
Right.
went to that.
Right.
And people didn't even know like she was up there, right? So that kind of like it spoiled everything, and then when she after that trip, the Russians, which I kind of can only assume was an arranged marriage, she married another cosmonaut. So the two people that had been in outer space had a kid, and I think it was an experiment. See what happens when you have a kid that from two parents that have been in outer space.
Interesting. I have like a memory of like multiple people dying on the same. Oh yes. Okay, I believe it was. So the day that they assassinated John F. Kennedy, I believe, is the same day that Aldous Huxley and C.S. Lewis passed away.
Oh my God, Huxley!
So all three on the exact same day, which is just a interesting fact for you there. Since you biked all this way, Kurt, I got to leave you some fun facts here. Okay, awesome. So much great stuff here. Now Vostok 6, though. Before we leave it. Some interesting guest appearances. So,
for sure.
Like so one. I'm going to shout out one guy who is a listener of the program, probably listening right now, and is a great FOTM. Tyler Stewart from the Bare Naked Ladies.
Yeah.
So he appears on that. That album.
That would have been a funny thing to look. He, it was basically like an MC guy and reading this little blast. And the other, I'm
going to play something first.
Sure.
I know. Here you are. I'm setting you up here. How about this?
The following program contains adult themes, nudity, and coarse language. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
Okay, please continue.
Well,
I'm just randomly playing Mark Daly on this program. Okay?
Well, Mark did a great thing. I was gigging a lot at City and Much, and I just said, hey, I'm doing this album, and I want cameos of different people, and I love your voice, and you represent Toronto in a big way for me. And so he came over to my humble studio, picked up what I'd written, and rambled through it. And luckily, I'd pressed record because it was perfect. He was such a pro. And I thought, oh, well, maybe do it once again just to make sure, And he did it perfectly again. And I wrote it exactly like a throw to one of the late night movies, right?
That's my whole youth, man. Like
Yeah.
him throwing to late night movies from the corner of Bloor and Bathurst.
Yeah,
City
so
TV everywhere. Yeah,
that's
late great movies
one of
and
the-
Porky's. It was always Porky's. Did you notice that?
Well, that's one of the tracks where he sets it up and he describes what's happening.
Wow.
Because it's a kind of a cinematic.
The voice. We literally call him the voice. And a recent argument, and I'm trying to remember who I was with, but very recently, this comes up quite a bit on Toronto Mike, okay? Because you've got a great Rush song called Subdivisions. You probably remember Subdivisions.
Yep.
Okay. And in fact, earlier you mentioned Neil Peart.
Right.
So there's a voice in that song, Subdivisions.
Right.
Subdivisions. And me and many others believe that's Mark Daly, even though I think when they asked Geddy Lee, he said it was Neil Peart or something. But I think that there might have been a reason why it was like uncredited or something. But I believe in all my heart and soul that it was actually Mark Daly's voice on that song. So do you have any insight into that?
No, I'm not really all that Rush literate, but I did see the doc movie and I fell in love with them as people, and I really appreciate their music now. But when I was a kid or younger, I was into the bands they were into, and when they came on the scene, it was very much like, well, I've already got a Led Zeppelin album, and I've already got King Crimson album, but now I really respect what they've achieved. And one thing, Mark Daly told me some fascinating stuff about his history. When he was in Detroit and Windsor,
The Big Eight.
Yeah, he was working there, but he befriended a lot of the music groups and the vocal groups in Motown, from Motown Records, and he said he was personal security for Marvin Gaye.
Wow.
He was getting these gigs, right? Because he was a big guy.
Yeah, sure.
But Wilder, one of the vocal quartets came to town once at a gig in Yorkville. I forget which one it was. It wasn't the Impressions, the Stylistics. I forget which one it was. And their bass singer was down. He was like, he had a cold or something. And they called Mark to sub in. Wow. And he did it. And it was like, because he knew the material, they knew he could do it. And apparently that night in Yorkville, if you went to their gig, you'd see these three dudes from Detroit and Mark Daly.
You know what? Awesome. Now, here's a fun fact for the listenership is that, and I believe this was revealed by FOTM Hall of Famer Ed Conroy himself, who goes by the name Retro Ontario, like collecting he basically digitizes old VHS tapes, and he's been doing that, and he kicks ass. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame, Kurt. But when of course Mark Daly's been dead now, sadly, for several years, and Mark Daly's widow contacted Ed and said, Mark had a whole bunch of like VHS cassettes of stuff that he had kept. And like, would you like this? And apparently there's like as we speak, there's some project underway to digitize all this Mark Daly material that he held on to in his personal collection.
Nice, yeah.
Amazing, right? I can't wait to hear that. Okay. So, gosh, still so much to cover here. Let's, should I go back to the Blair Pack? No, because I'm actually going to play you did reference that you did a lot of stuff at Much and Chum, of course. It's called Much because Much is an anagram of Chum. This I should have known this. Yeah, Mike was on recently. Mike Campbell from Mike and Mike's Excellent Cross Country Adventure, and he was talking about going to the CRTC to get the license for Chum. But here is what I'm playing next. This would be something that you'd hear on City TV in the 90s.
Hi, atop headquarters at 299 Queen West. This is City TV everywhere. The following is a special presentation. Movie television returns next week in its regular time slot.
One of the things when people watch beer ads, they say, my, those must be a lot of fun to shoot.
First thing is, I loved media television.
Yeah.
But secondly is, Kurt Swinghammer, why is this opening theme significant to you?
Well, it was, I loved that type of show. Like when I was a kid, there was one called Here Come the 70s, and in the States, there was Walter Cronkite had 21st Century, and so media television, I just love the content. And when they were putting the animation together for the intro. I knew the people that were doing that, and they asked me to. Moses asked me to do the music. I remember it was awesome because I could go over to where the animators were and go, well, let's set up a structural thing, like a tempo, and so that everything would hit, you know. So I got a chance to kind of score the piece, which doesn't always happen for like a TV theme, you know. And it just made for a very powerful intro, and it actually won awards and stuff because the animation at that time was really cutting edge. And it was fun to just go really super techno-y, and I think at the time it sounded really different, more aggressive than anything else that was on TV. And it lasted for about 13 years.
Well, to make sure we didn't bury the lead there, I don't think we did, but just in case, you, Kurt Swinghammer, you created the theme music for City TV's media television.
Yeah, it was at that time, I did the Ziggy show.
I love Ziggy.
Life on Venus app was really fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, so, and yeah, I'm a big fan of everything going on there at 299 Queen Street West. So you can always drop anything. Don't be shy here. Okay. So back to Blair Packham's epic note he sent me when he heard you were coming on. All right. Yeah, it's about time we get to your paintings. I've been looking at some of your paintings and they're gorgeous, but Blair would like me to ask you about your incredible paintings.
Well, I just yesterday delivered a new show out to Prince Edward County to the Hatch Gallery in Bloomfield, a really nice little part of that world. And I've been doing visual art ever since I was like a little kid.
What came first, the visual art or the music?
Well, I didn't get a guitar till I was 7, but I was already doing a lot of visual stuff, like really into it. And I always thought I'd keep the music maybe more personal, but it's always been half and half. And so it's...
And where in Ontario are you? Like whereabouts are you in the province?
Where did I grow up?
Yeah.
Born in Newmarket, moved to Fort Erie, then moved to Bowmanville, then to Newcastle, and then to Niagara Falls, and then to Toronto.
Newmarket, home of Alan Frew, who's here on Wednesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's coming here Wednesday.
Once I did a gig with, maybe even Blair Packham was on that gig.
What?
And there was like 4 singer-songwriters on the stage, and Alan was the, sort of like introducing everybody, and he forgot to introduce me. So that created a great opportunity for me to do something a little snarky. So I'm sorry, Alan, if I was...
okay, work with me on this. Okay, so the biggest Canadian hit, I think it's like technically I went in and looked at the Billboard Hot 100, and I think it's their second biggest American hit, but the biggest Canadian hit for Glass Tiger is Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone, right?
That's a good song.
Great song. I think it's a great pop song.
Yeah.
So
the horns are amazing.
85, there's background vocals by Bryan Adams, because the co-writer of that song, Jim Vallance, right? So that's 85, okay? What else is Jim Vallance working on in 85? Tears Are Not Enough. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, why is Alan Frew not on Tears Are Not Enough?
You're asking me why?
I'm asking you, not that you would know, but I'm just rehearsing for Wednesday. I feel like, I know that's early times for Glass Tiger. Like, that's like their first big hit, I guess, is Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone. So maybe they were not big enough. I don't know. I just think it would be a slam dunk to slide in an Alan Frew into the chorus of Tears Are Not Enough.
Right.
I don't know. You don't even have to dignify this with a response, because how the hell would Kurt Swinghammer know? Except Jim Vallance is writing the song that hit. Anyway, this is all the stuff I think about when I'm on these bike rides.
Right. Yeah, like it's interesting to look at those things as like these snapshots of time, and like, oh, Luba like is in there, and like somebody else didn't get in there, and Neil Young's, that's my sound, man. Like, it's interesting to see who makes the cut, and often like
and who was invited but didn't make it. I've had chats with, who told me this, Terry David Mulligan, who was buddies with that whole Bruce Allen, Jim Vallance circle in Vancouver at the time. And there's a name, in fact, again, we're not going in order today, everybody. There's just so much stuff, exciting stuff going on. But this song here.
Oh, yeah.
Who are you, slick? You investors in hate? You Saddams and you Bushes? You Bin Ladens and snakes? You billionaire bullies? You're a globalized curse. You put war on the masses and then you clean out the purse. And that's how it's done. War after war. You old feudal parasites, you just sacrifice the poor. You got the cutting edge weapons, but your scam's still the same as it's been since the Romans. Yo, it's the Patriot game. Yo, that's the war racket. It's the war racket. It's the war racket. It's the war racket.
All right, I'm playing this particular Buffy St. Marie song for a reason, but before I get to that reason, Buffy was invited to be a part. She was all going to be I think she was getting her own like line in the big part of the song. She was on Tears Are Not Enough. And then this phone call comes in because Terry David Mulligan witnessed this call, I guess, to Bruce Allen. And then Bruce puts down the phone and says these two words, which I have used many times since I learned about this. Buffy bailed. So Buffy bailed. No Buffy St. Marie on Tears Are Not Enough. She should have been there, of course. Why am I playing this specific Buffy St. Marie song, which is called The War Racket?
Yeah, I got a call to do an animated video for this track that they released as a single, and this was produced by Michael Philip Voivoda and mixed. No, sorry, that's wrong. That's
okay.
wrong.
Well, I'm not fixing that in post.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll
sorry
just
about that.
correct it on the record here.
He had done the previous record, but so I had a call with Buffy and told her what I was thinking of doing, and she said, well, just don't make it too gory. And because I had this idea of like skeletons dancing around on the chorus, and I said, no, it's going to be a bit more, it's going to have some humor, and and so she said, okay, great. And as you probably know, like very often you have to change things and revise, and the artist sees the video, go, no, I want something different. It's very, very common to have people want to revise things. And she saw it, loved it, didn't ask for a single change. And it's since become part of her show, actually. And I went to see her at Massey Hall, and she had it projected, and she all synced up. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I was really, really dug into it because the lyrics are awesome.
Yeah.
And the dancing skeleton thing is, I actually got black leotards and painted a skeleton, and that's me dancing around. I chroma keyed myself into it.
I love this tangent run right now. I wanted to cover that anyways, obviously, but all because you said you were from Newmarket. That's where that came from. So shout out to Alan Frew. He's on the program Wednesday, but Kurt Swinghammer is here right now. So, okay, so you're always interested in art. You're interested in creating art. You're interested in music. Young man growing up around, bouncing around Ontario. Okay, so this is a good time for me to play this next jam. So I'm going to let Buffy bring us into the next song here.
That's the war racket. That's the war racket.
that's not for me. Well, you can't have fun on the York you run, and the oxygen trolley is just a big folly. Well, I don't give a damn about the baffle strap, but I'll make a fuss about the bus, 'cause I'm 77B on the TTC. Yeah, 77B on the TTC. Well, 77A, I guess it'll be okay. But I want 77B on the TTC. Hey, check it out, I went down to the station.
Man, this is a Toronto jam. Okay, the Shuffle Demons. Does it, you tell me, is this sort of where it all begins for you? Like, in terms of, like, I want to know in the origin of things, like, whereabouts in your career do you start designing, album covers for the Shuffle Demons and such?
Well, that was the first album cover I did. Maybe the second. But I'd gotten to know Rich and Underhill, and he's seeing the stuff I was doing, and it thought it'd be a nice mix. So I did the cover for this album. And then Joel Goldberg was directing a video for the next song, Out of My House Roach, and asked me to art direct that and create the set design and shit. And so that led to a long relationship with the Demons and doing T-shirts and album covers and videos and things. And Goldberg was the director who went on to do Maestro Fresh Wes, right? And that was a whole other thing happening there.
Let Your Backbone Slide. You kidding me?
Yeah, those things blew up. But
also one of the co-founders of Electric Circus, the show.
Right. Yeah. And he directed a video for me, and we've worked occasionally over the years with Patricia O'Callaghan. We did a video. But I was living in a situation downtown with like a shared space with these other jazz musicians, so I kind of got to know Rich from this jazz scene. Like, they were all like into Ornette Coleman and sort of more avant-garde jazz, and it was so much fun. And then after that album, Rich said, "Why don't you do the next cover?" And so I had a chance to do it from scratch, and I painted their outfits, and which took like a week of my life, and for $500 or whatever, and but it established a look for that band. And they've kept those suits up, but at one point they just fell apart. They were worn so much, and somebody else is painting them now in the style of, which it's like it's a little weird, but
it's an homage to Kurt Swinghammer.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
You designed the Shuffle Demons painted suits. That's I can't believe I'm talking to the guy who designed the Shuffle Demons painted suits. Amazing. Okay, very cool. And at what point in your career here do you get on the cover of Now magazine? Because I would think back then that would be a huge deal to be on the cover of Now.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, the funny thing is with that, I was delivering Now magazines. At my last part-time job, which was one day a week. I had two at the same time. I was bussing at the Cameron on Friday and Saturday nights. And then I was on Thursdays would deliver Now magazines, and it was all the musicians. The National Velvet, remember that band? They were doing it.
Absolutely.
Skydiggers, Andy, I think, was doing it.
Love it.
It was all maybe Andrew Cash might have been doing it. So all these people all these musicians were delivering Now magazines. It was a really fun job, and then one day I got the call like, "Oh, we're going to review your new album and put you on the cover." And it's like, I can't possibly deliver the magazine with my picture on the cover. So I quit Now magazine, and because it would have taken all the glamour out of that, right?
That's funny. Yeah, it's like look at me now. Okay, cool. But I will years later. Go ahead. No, finish your story.
Well, that was for an album, my first CD called Pomo a Go-Go, and that came out on a little label called Fringe Product. They licensed it off me. And like every other label situation, I've never seen 1 cent from that. But it was a fun record, and yeah.
Oh man. Okay, but many years later, you would be recognized as Best Local Guitarist. You got the Best Local Guitarist Award from Now Magazine's Readers Poll. This is in 2000.
Yeah. And Jeff Healey got second place. What can I say?
Is that true? You could beat Jeff Healey. That's amazing. That's amazing. Shout out to Jeff Healey. Now, the drummer for Jeff Healey Band just passed away, actually, earlier this year, Tom Stephen. He's an FOTM, too. Now, I mean, it's okay, so much ground to cover. I'm just looking here. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give you a couple of gifts Then I'll get back to the Blair Packham note, and then I have a few other hot spots I want to hit. I hope you're having a good time. How you doing there, Kurt Swinghammer?
Awesome. I'm honored to be here with Toronto Mike, for sure.
Swinghammer, though, because you're a guitarist, right? Like, the Swinghammer is a fake name, right?
No. My dad...
Show me your driver's license.
Yeah, my dad was born Louis Swinghammer in Germany, came over here when he's 3 years old, and to avoid all the hoopla over there, and was fought in the Second World War underage. He snuck in as a 16-year-old or something because he didn't want to be in a small town, Ontario, as the only guy or whatever.
Wow.
And
it's like the movie.
His lieutenant or whatever couldn't get their head around pronouncing Schwing, you know. And so he called him Swinghammer. And when my dad came back home, he just kept it. And he never changed it officially or anything, but it became Swinghammer.
Fascinating. I was actually, so your dad, I'm glad you brought up your dad, because Blair tipped me off that he met Paul McCartney.
He did, yeah. Like
in the 60s.
When the Beatles came to Toronto, my dad was Electric Glide motorcade cop, right? He rode the big Harley. And this OPP were hired to be the security. And so they escorted the Beatles from Malton Airport to the King Eddie. And when they were at the airport, my dad had the wherewithal to get John and Paul's autograph on the same piece of paper, which is remarkable. And then the Telegram, which was one of the big newspapers at the time, the staff photographer shot my dad getting in his OPP drag with Paul's in his Pierre Cardin outfit. And, you know, it's just, I've got it blown up really big because it's the coolest photo of all time.
Well, you know, of course, you know, on the cover of the Sgt. Pepper album, there's the OPP. That's your dad's doing.
Well, my dad didn't talk to me. We didn't have a rapport. And I never did hear how the OPP crest got there, but I don't think it would have been my dad.
Print the legend, Kurt. Print the legend. Liberty Valance here. Okay, because that's kind of wild that Swinghammer, your father, is the reason there's an OPP logo on the cover of Sgt. Pepper.
But it looks like OPD, officially pronounced dead. That was one of the
right,
clues.
Paul is dead, right?
Yeah,
right.
It was a clue.
What a time to be alive. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, by the way. And see, that's how we roll here, Kurt. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. The good news is Paul is still with us, still very much alive. By the way, we talked quite a bit about Paul Myers. It's worth noting, I'm going to make this up, okay? I'm just letting everyone know I'm making this up, but I'm going to say it anyway. Paul Myers, his brother, Mike Myers, heard about Swinghammer and said for Wayne Campbell of Wayne's World, Swing! Right? You can also print that legend.
Right.
It works too. Okay.
Well, there is a character. I found it just a couple years ago. The band, either Bread or Air Supply, there was a musical about that incorporated all their tunes and told some crazy story, and it was
got to be Air Supply because of his Jim Steinman connection. I feel like that was all show like Broadway style songs. But
right.
Sorry.
Well, but there was a Toronto theater director who did this, mounted this show, and it was in like I don't know, just in Thailand or someplace beautifully exotic. And somebody said, "Hey, man, there's a character named Kurt Swinghammer in this musical." And I was like, what? Like, and so I wrote them. I said, and it turned, and I read the stuff, and the character, Kurt Swinghammer, in this musical of Air Supply or Bread, is like a kind of a bad A&R guy, kind of nasty music biz character, which is like, you know, sometimes I only listen to music for 15 seconds, but I'm not an industry insider.
Right.
And so I wrote them. I said, well, send me tickets and airplane tickets to your show, and I won't sue you. You know, it's like, but nothing became of it. It was
interesting though, because that's not a coincidence.
And
somebody,
the Toronto director, who he would have heard my name at some point.
Of course he would have. Of course, very interesting. All right, so you got your beer from Great Lakes. Do you like Italian food, Kurt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got a large lasagna for you in my freezer, courtesy of Palma Pasta.
Awesome.
Delicious, authentic Italian food here in GTA. There are 4 locations, Mississauga and Oakville. Go to palmapasta.com. Thank you, Palma Pasta. I also have, by the way, Ridley Funeral Home wants you to have this measuring tape there in case you need to, emergency measurements need to take place, Kurt. Okay.
Good to know. Thank you.
Insert joke here. Okay. But Moneris, they've sent over this wireless speaker. It sounds damn good. And with that wireless speaker, you're going to listen to season 4 of Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego, who I hope to see Thursday night, because we're having TMLX 12 at 6 p.m. this coming Thursday, which is May 11th. If you want the map, just Google TMLX 12 or write me, Mike at TorontoMike.com. I'll send you the map where we're going to all gather and enjoy tasty beverages and check in with one another. But Al Grego's been traveling the country, talking to small business owners, gathering their stories so they can inspire entrepreneurs and other small business owners like me. And this season's been awesome. Season 4, Yes, We Are Open. Subscribe, listen, enjoy. That's what you're going to do if you're a wireless speaker there.
Sweet.
And I am going to just shout out Recycle My Electronics since I talked about this wireless speaker. Because if you have any old tech, any old electronics you need to dispose of, don't throw it in the garbage. It just ends up in the landfill, and those chemicals do not belong in the landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and find out a safe place to drop off your old tech. So thank you, EPRA, for recyclemyelectronics.ca. Let me go back to the Blair Packham note here. He says, ask him, great question. How many albums have you released? And before you give me a number, Blair wants you to know his favorites are, in this order. This is a great note, Blair. The Vostok 6 that we talked about, and Black Eyed Sue.
Right.
He still loves the song Tammy Left Town. How many albums you released?
Well, there's at least a dozen. And I've got a couple in the can that I've been very slow to put out to the world because it's so depressing to put a record out these days. But I do have two that are mixed.
Do you want to speak to that? Just like I mean, I feel it's an obvious, like we all know, but maybe hearing from someone from your perspective, like how have things changed for a songwriter like yourself?
Well, I've never relied on music to make a living other than writing for film and TV, and I was very much immersed in that world for a long time, and very appreciative of those gigs, and was able to buy a house downtown because of TV music. But my music that I put out on for myself is just, I'm doing it because I have an impulse to make music, and there's no financial reward whatsoever.
Well, you're an artist, and that's some of your art that you're producing.
Yeah, and I've never expected it to do anything other than just make me feel good making music. But at this point, like, it just feels like there's too much stuff in the world in all areas, and so contributing to this landfill of music is kind of depressing. And there seems to be like this, 24-hour news cycle of music now that it's there for a day and then it disappears. And even like Paul McCartney will put out a record and people really don't care. They don't really want to hear anything other than Blackbird or whatever. But I hear new stuff sometimes, like a band like Black Midi or something comes out of the blue and it's like, this is wild. It's visceral and it's exciting and inspiring. And thank God people do put out music. But on a personal level, it's like going to a dance and no one asks you to dance. It's like nothing's worse. So I'm sort of nothing's going to stop me from making music, but the idea of going through the trouble of releasing it is, I'm not that ambitious anymore.
Let me play a little something here so we can at least talk about this project. Ginger Snaps 2 Unleashed. Have you seen Ginger Snaps too?
Oh yeah. Well, I saw it like a million times. And
Just making sure there.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, when you score a film, you watch it hundreds of times, or at least segments of it. And that was actually Laurie, my partner, is singing, and the only track that has any vocals on it, and most of it's very, very like hardcore techno. I was listening to a lot of Autechre and sort of industrial EDM, or like complicated sort of techno, and so most of the music on that is really aggressive, and it's actually the most successful album I ever put out. It's one label decided to release it as the soundtrack,
right?
And to this day, like goth kids all over the world, download it from Bandcamp.
It's interesting. You never know what will be your most popular piece of work, and it's going to be your, ambient techno soundtrack to the cult horror film Ginger Snaps 2.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, the process of that, the producer, when we had a meeting, said, I don't want any guitar in this album. No, can't have any guitar. And 99% of that album is made on guitar, but you'd never recognize it as guitar. Just processed through the smithereens. And I played a lap steel for the most part, and just like throwing the bar at the thing, and just got the crazy sounds out of it, because it's such an expressive instrument, a lap steel with a bar. But I never told the producer, by the way, there's a lot of guitar in here, but it didn't sound like guitar.
Here is the conclusion to the Blair Packham essay. Okay, so it gets a little real here. I really, kind of emotional here. He writes, Kurt taught me by example to be a hugger. I began hugging my own dad again after maybe 10 years of not. And I did that because of Kurt.
Oh, well, that's lovely. I met his dad and his mom. His mom's a really interesting painter, and they were just like, they were beautiful people, and it's touching to hear that. I had no idea.
He says, I love Kurt and admire him deeply. So thank you, Blair.
That's nice, yeah.
Wow. All right, going to hit a few more hot spots here you've been amazing, before we wrap up. So here, literally, like these are like the best of the rest. And then if I missed anything you really wanted to talk about, of course, we'll give you an opportunity to talk about that. But I did play the Buffy St. Marie cut, and I wanted to play this one.
Oh, it's so good.
This is Bruce Colburn's Us All. Beautiful song by Bruce.
Yeah. It's from his most recent record, and Colin Linden produced. Gary Craig's on drums there, one of my favorite drummers. He's amazing. And True North asked me to come up with some lyric videos. So I did 3 videos for the new Bruce. I'd done a couple animated videos for previous records, and they just give me total free reign, do what you want. Nobody had to prove anything, and just, and I just fell in love with this track. And because, Bruce for me has always been a real example of like, how do you conduct yourself as a musician in Canada, and remarkable career, and you go through his work, it's just amazing. And I had done when COVID hit, I did a little painting of a COVID molecule, sort of inspired by all these graphics I was seeing of like, how do you render a COVID. So I did one. I just wanted a reminder when I left the house, put on your mask. And so I wanted to do a little painting of a COVID.
Interesting.
And but then I became like, the dude in Close Encounters who does like the mountain over and over and over again. I became obsessed with it, and I ended up doing over 150 of these little COVIDs and would name them COVID number 20, COVID 21. But I felt like, what am I going to do with these things? I made a mural at home, like sort of a mosaic of these things, which was really neat. But for Bruce's cover, the artist had this nice image, and this album's called "Oh Sun, Oh Moon," and the COVIDs that I was doing look celestial, look like, it could be a star or its planet or something. And so I thought, this relates to the cover, and it had a spiritual quality when I started animating them. They became mandalas and really seemed to be a nice image for the song, and not distracting, and there's, like, it's just a textural image that's kind of fading in and out, and very subtle passive movements. And I was really, really enamored with that song, and honored to do a visual for it.
Amazing. Now to go further back, you mentioned murals a minute ago. Is it true, Mr. Swinghammer, that a mural of yours can be seen in Tom Cruise's Cocktail?
Yeah, that's true. I've not seen the film, but I did see it, like a clip of it, I think on YouTube or something.
Do you know I've never seen the film either?
Yeah.
That's a blockbuster. How did we both miss that film? I feel like most people have seen Cocktail. But
yeah. Well, they shot at Lee's Palace upstairs in the dance cave. And I'd done at Lee's Palace, I'd done the Lee's logo. I came up with the logo, and believe it or not, there's shots of bands like Nirvana and stuff are in front of my logo, which it's kind of cool. Yeah. But upstairs, Fiona Smythe did a wall, and I did a wall, and I threw up this thing that says Dance Cave, like really, really big mural. And there's this shot of Tom Cruise like making cocktails in the movie Cocktail.
Sure. And
in the background there's a maybe slightly out of focus for some depth of field, there's the Dance Cave mural that I don't think I get any credit or anything in the role at the end of the film. But, yeah.
I don't know, did I own I'm asking you as if you could ever have a clue if I owned the Cocktail soundtrack on cassette, but I might have owned that at some point. Right. Like, I feel like that was I know it had Beach Boys Kokomo on it, but it had a lot of big jams on it, as I recall, the Cocktail soundtrack.
Right.
Anyway, tell me what you did for CKLN.
Yeah, CKLN, community radio station, awesome station. A lot of great people came through there and have gone on to wonderful things. And I started just donating my graphics to them to do posters and things, and we started doing annual fundraising T-shirts. And at one point, I could not go out any night and not see somebody wearing those. They would do like maybe 10,000 of them. they were all over the place, and did 4 or 5 of them, I think. And it was just really beautiful to give create a visual representation for this station that I loved and was multicultural and very diverse. And like once, even my own stuff would get played sometimes. And I remember like they had these little like charts, you know. And I remember the first time, before I started doing the graphics actually, but when one of my first cassettes that I put out, I got charted on CKLN, and I was going to, kind of write home to my mom, say, hey, look, I'm on a chart. But I was right, the artist right behind me was on a label called Radical Cunts Anonymous. So I didn't show that to my mom.
Oh, that's great. Speaking of CKLN, here's how we're going to tie things up here. DJ Ron Nelson, of course, hosted Fantastic Voyage on CKLN. DJ Ron Nelson's been over here to talk all about it. One of the local rappers that he broke on that program, a number of FOTMs, including Maestro Fresh Wes, and you did touch on it, but now I need the specifics now. So what's specific? Because you mentioned Joel Goldberg, also a good FOTM, by the way. Hello, Joel, if you're listening. So Joel Goldberg, we talked about him directing the Let Your Backbone Slide and Drop the Needle.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they get, Juno awards and MuchMusic awards and all that, but what specifically did you do for those videos? Is it that graffiti design? Like what is okay, that's a very cool aspect. I wanted to get the specifics as what you were doing for those 2 videos.
Yeah, like set designs and graphics. The second one, Drop the Needle, was a bit more green screen stuff. So I generated a bunch of images, and then they would be, people would be dancing in front of them via green screen. Backbone was shot in an old church, and so I did some big murals on seamless paper, like from the photography stuff, like it'd be like 8 by 30 feet long or whatever, right? And
wow,
yeah, and that actually, it was really, really remarkable because before that video, I'd never heard of the guy. I remember going to the Rivoli one night and seeing these 2 really cool dudes, and their jackets said "Dope State." I thought, wow, that's so hip. And that turned out to be Maestro and his manager,
Farley Flex.
Yeah, Farley Flex.
FOTM Farley Flex, yeah.
But so when I got the call from Joel to do this, I thought, oh, cool, this sounds neat. Let's do this video. And when we got to the space, there was like 200 kids lined up waiting to go in.
Wow.
And usually it's a nightmare trying to, beg for people to be in the dance part of the video, right? But something was happening with him already. And then the video just blew up, and it became the most requested video. Yeah, won Junos and MuchMusic awards. And just a couple of years ago, like even like TIFF included it as like one of the 100 most important Canadian moving images or something. That had a very prestigious kind
amazing.
of... Yeah.
Amazing you had a role in that, and just love it. And shout out to FOTM Dwight Drummond, who has a cameo in both those videos.
He was on the crew of one of my videos that Joel directed.
Because he was doing like security for Electric Circus.
Oh, yeah.
That's how, and then of course that's Joel's thing. And that's where Maestro gets his US record deal, because an artist named Stevie B was playing Electric Circus and saw him there and said, yeah.
Well, and then Joel asked me to art direct a Stevie B video, and he came up and he hated the stuff. He just said, I'm not doing it. Because maybe I just pushed it a bit too far. But
gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't please everybody, Kurt. Come on. Now before I close up, a couple of just more recent Kurt Swinghammer songs. Although now I want to call you Swinghammer. But okay, I need to know, because we cover very in depth here on Toronto Mike. We cover the ongoing history of CFNY. You designed the Casby Award logo.
Oh yeah, that was at one point. Yeah. Casby is a Canadian artist as selected by you. So it was an alternative to Junos. And
yeah, but they were called Unos.
Unos was a sort of
Yeah, they were like a parody of Junos. And David Marsden called them the Unos. Yeah. And then they morphed into Casby's Canadian artist as selected by you.
Yeah.
And you did the logo and the set. You did the set design. Like, what does that mean? What's set design?
Well, it's just like
it's a radio station, right?
Well, but they had a live show,
right?
And it needed some sort of continuity with the visuals, and I did a big mural with it would have been like 30 feet wide and 12 feet high or something, and the program, so everything kind of tied together, and CFNY was really important, right? Like that was an incredible station, like maybe one of the most interesting radio stations in North America, really, you know.
It comes back to Rush. They wrote Spirit of Radio.
Right, yeah.
See, everything's full circle here. Any on-air personalities at CFNY you want to name check here that you would listen to back in the day?
Rainer Schwartz was there briefly, but he had other things, like he did a video show on TVO, which was just remarkable. He was like a visionary and anticipated what would happen with music video. And I tried to watch that as anytime. It was kind of on late at night, and it was so incredible what he would do. And then he did the news at multicultural television for a while, and he would dress up like a news anchor, kind of straight, but then he would editorialize on the HP. So he would give his 2 cents, which I thought, yeah, that's what's lacking in news coverage, you know, some opinions.
Yeah. Okay. I know FOTM Danny Elwell has wonderful things to say about Rainer Schwartz and what he meant to her when they worked together at CFNY.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, there were, like in the day, it was so happening, and unlike any other commercial radio station, it was just incredible. And they were the first radio play that I ever got, like, because they would actually play local cassettes at the Streets of Ontario with the Liz Janik, right?
Right, Liz Janik, yes, absolutely. When you're bored one day, go listen to episode 1021 of Toronto Mike, which is 1021, and it's got Liz Janik and a whole bunch of people you'd want to, Ivor Hamilton, I'll name check Scott Turner, May Potts, Alan Cross, David Marston, Humble and Fred, a whole bunch of interesting people on that program. Okay. So we're going to close with a couple of songs.
Mansbridge had tears in his eyes when he told the country the news that Jack Layton had died, and a little part of me died too. The part that had faith, a politician could be on my side, a leader I could believe in, who stood for what was right. But Mansbridge didn't know. Later on that very day, in a Fonthill nursing home, Grace Appleton passed away. Jack Layton and Grace Appleton, Jack Layton and Grace Appleton, two names that never were mentioned in the same breath. She wasn't famous and she wasn't rich. She lived and voted conservatively, but she was the president of the Niagara Falls Horticultural Society. Yeah. They lit up the CN Tower, bright orange of the NDP, and my mom's favorite flower, her garden full of tiger lilies. Jack Layton and Grace Appleton, Jack Layton and Grace Appleton, two names that never were together.
Jack Layton and Grace Appleton.
Yeah.
Tell me about this song.
Well, my mom was, she was very sick and dying. And Laurie and I would, drive to Fonthill, where she was in this nursing home. And one day we're going to drive, and I turn on the news in the morning, and there's Mansbridge totally losing his shit because Jack had died. And Jack and Olivia had asked me a number of times to do graphics for their campaigns and stuff, and I really admired Jack so much, and we were going to call our son Layton, but it just felt a little pretentious, Layton Swinghammer, so we ditched that idea eventually. But So I just, it was an interesting coincidence that he died when my mom died. And then when months go by, and I was invited to do a recording out at the Canadian Music Centre in Calgary, which has this phenomenal collection of synthesizers. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. So I dragged Michael Philip Voivoda out with me because I thought if you do all the tech, if you record everything and I'll play everything, it'd be great. And so I thought, well, I don't want to wing it. Like I thought I could go out there and just improvise, but I thought I'm going to write everything out. And so I wrote an album about my mom and making use of all these incredible keyboards and they have like the theremin from 1928 and stuff like that. It's just phenomenal. And then the music, the only record I ever played that my mom actually said, "Oh, what is that? Well, it's really interesting." It was Brian Eno's music for airports. Right. And so when I got that, I was playing it all the time, and she said, "Yeah, that's really interesting." And she'd never liked any music I ever played ever. And then when my dad died, I played it at his funeral, and later on, she goes, "What was that music?" Because that would have been separated by I don't know how many decades. Right. She said, "What was that music? It was really, really interesting." And I thought, oh. The second time you remember hearing it or whatever, it's like it resonated. And then when she was dying, I was playing it in the room just because it's so beautiful. And I thought that would resonate with her. So I analyzed the chord sequences from one of Eno's albums, Another Green World, and found two songs that share the same chord sequence. And then for all the songs on this album that I did about my mom, it's all on these musical relationships that are part of the Eno thing. And because he's always been one of my big heroes. So that's what that album's about.
And that's called Another.
Yeah, because it was from Another Green World, the chords, but they're not overt. Like it's kind of just like I say, it's the DNA that's inside the songs. It's from Eno. And
I should tell people listening, if you go to swinghammer.bandcamp.com, you can grab a whole bunch of great Kurt Swinghammer songs, including the album Another we just heard from. And I wanted to close with something from the Kurt of Kensington.
It's a true story.
I open my door to a day in the life as sung by the hippie across the street on an abysmal acoustic guitar with a bad bungle beat. And the Portuguese men are staring again as they do every day from the billiard hall. Well, don't they have anything better to do with their lives? And they're the $1, $2, $3 store. They've just run out of roach motels, and Bruce Copen's photograph is no longer on the wall at the pizza joint around the corner. Is it my imagination, or have things settled down since a bunch of fucking goofs got kicked out of the fort and the cops cracked down on the crack house on Kensington? Well, I close my door to Hotel California as played by the hippie across the street on an abysmal acoustic guitar. An abysmal acoustic guitar. An abysmal acoustic guitar with a bad bongo beat.
Kensington from the Kurt of Kensington. Again, that's at swinghammer.bandcamp.com as well.
And that's a live track at the Glenn Gould. We recorded an album live and no overdubs, a little bit of reverb.
Amazing. Yeah. Look at you. Kurt, oh my God, I took so much of your valuable time here. Is there anything I didn't cover that you wanted to share with everybody, or, you're welcome to save it for a sequel? I mean, I thought about at one point I thought, hey, I could just ask him about all the different people he did like guitar session work for. And then I said, what a list, from Great Big Sea, Rheostatic, Sarah Slean, Royal Wood. I mean, You mentioned Peter Murphy, Ani, Lorraine Sagato,
Right.
Wild Strawberries. We talked quite a bit about Ron Sexsmith, your wife, of course. But like, I thought, okay, what about all these different artists he was like a house band guitarist for, like at different like benefits and variety shows? And I said, I can ask him about Kevin Drew and Emily Haynes and Ed Robertson of the Bare Naked Ladies. And of course, we talked a little bit about Andy Mays, and then there's Andy Kim. They're both FOTMs. But anything you wanted to share before we play some Lowest of the Low to say goodbye here?
Right. Well, I do have a site that has the visual art and, there's prints available and stuff like that. But if people just want to see what I'm currently working on, there's these landscape-based paintings are up there. And that's, if you search Kurt Swinghammer, it'll come up.
Okay, cool. And maybe, last thing, maybe, because I think it was very, very early in your career, but you collaborated with Andy Stokansky.
Yeah, we did an album together. We were back in the day with ADATs. You could just, send a tape back and forth, and did a sort of fairly experimental thing, and then, it was...
Okay, cool. You ever worked with Lowest of the Low?
I did a gig with Steve Stanley just a few months back. I did a gig with the Low like really early on. We were shared a bill, but that's we haven't really crossed paths a lot.
Well, thanks, Kurt, man. This was I always thought of you as almost like a missing link kind of guy to fill in a whole bunch of cracks, and you've just been a part of the scene for seemingly forever. Musically, your artwork, the commercial work, all of it, and man, just. Now you're an FOTM, but thanks for doing this, buddy.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate having the excuse to get on my bike and ride out here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day to bike. Finally, although I bike in all weather, right? Nice. So I bike all year round, but man, what a day today was.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,252nd show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. So, Kurt, you're actively tweeting on Twitter. Whereabouts can we follow you on social media?
Yeah, I like the Facebook format a bit more, but I do have a Twitter thing. I don't really tweet. And Instagram, I put images up like of my work, basically. Follow
Kurt and check out his great work. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery, they're at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Moneris is at Moneris. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA. Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. And I want to shout out the Moment Lab. If you've been struggling to get your message out to the world, if you're looking to increase your brand's visibility and reach your target audience, the Moment Lab specializes in public relations and has a team of experienced professionals who know how to craft stories that resonate with your audience and generate positive media coverage. I'm happy to introduce you to my friends Matt and Jared at the Moment Lab to learn more about how they can help you achieve your public relations goals. They're on Twitter at the Moment Lab. See you all later this week when my special guest is Alan Frew of Glass Tiger.
Is the best that I can. Well, maybe I'm not, and maybe I am. Who gives a damn? Because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything rosy and gray. my name. And I've seen the sun go down on Sacré-Cœur.